All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Pellicciati. I'm the manager of inclusive assessment. I'm joined here by Deborah Hand. We also have some teacher consultants, and Kevin Froten from Cognia program manager. Thank you. I thank you for signing on to this registration, this training this morning. We're going to hear a lot about the MCAS-Alt from what we would call administrator's point of view. If you're an administrator in a school, special education administrator, if you're an education team leader, there's going to be some important information regarding the MCAS-Alt that you would want to pay attention to during this presentation. Deborah Hand's going to begin the presentation and talk a little about the agenda. You're going to hear from myself. Kevin Froten's going to manage some of the slides, and we have the teacher consultants who are going to be and help us answer some questions. And I can let Deb introduce them as well.
Thank you,
Go ahead,
Rob.
Deb.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Deborah Hand. I'm the MCAS-Alt coordinator. I've probably spoken to a lot of you. So I wish I could see you all, but I can't. So as Rob said, behind the curtains, we have our teacher consultants, Laura Hines, Diane Costello, Patty Sperano, and soon to join us will be Sheila Chamberlain. So they'll be answering questions along the way. Hopefully we will be clear enough and you'll have most of your questions answered. But I'd like to get started with having you take out whatever you use to put your dates on, whether it's in your phone, digitally, whether you have a day timer, whether you have a Post-it note that you use, but these dates, I would like you to put someplace that you'll be able to access them. And just a reminder, the principal's manual for the ALT has all of these dates and explains in a lot more detail some of the other things like how to submit and those types of things. But I want you to get these dates down because they're very important. The first one is ordering material. And because that happens right after the December break, you will get your password from MCAS. It's the same one, and you'll use it to order your MCAS-Alt material. And that will be between January 2nd and the 12th. It's very important that you check with your teachers before you order. So it'll be the end of December, just making sure that no students have come in. Once the material are in, you're going to open that box and make sure that you have everything and that you don't need more because you can always order more. Those materials will come right after you get back from February break. Once you check that shipment, you're going to complete part 1 of the PCPA. Okay, so just be aware of that to make sure that you've gotten everything. And that way we won't bother you to do that part 1. Then for the shipment, you're going to use the online MCAS Service Center, which is the same place you're going to go to register, but you're going to do it in March to schedule a UPS pickup. And you're going to do that by 2:30 on Wednesday, March 27th. I'm saying 2:30 because the UPS site closes at 3 on the dot, and we have no control over it, and they're done. So many of you say it always was 3 o'clock. It was, but what happens, people would dial in 3:04 and it was closed. So 2:30 gives you a little bit of a wiggle room. So if you forget, you can still call it 2:45. You can also call before the 27th to schedule your pickup on the 27th. Just a little tip here. They're going to be picked up on March 28th. By 5 o'clock, they have to be picked up, but please make sure that someone is there to get them, because what happens is the UPS driver may come or may be late and no one can wait, and so it doesn't get picked up. So just make sure you have someone that's willing to wait for the UPS driver to come. So I'm going to turn this back over to Rob because we have some important criteria that we need you to be aware of, and you may have already heard about it.
Oh, thanks, Deb. I really appreciate it. Yeah, one of the important things we're going to discuss today is the criteria and guidelines for determining participate in the assessment, MCAS-Alt assessments, and assessments for MCAS in general. So the past several years, we've had what was known as the decision tree regarding helping teams, or instructive tool to help teams participate in the MCAS-Alt or MCAS test with accommodations. There is still a variety of assessment accommodations or assessment options for students. Students with disabilities can certainly take the standard MCAS test, just like everybody else, using universal accessibility features. There's accommodations that could be recorded in their IEP. We have grade level competency portfolios available for this year for students, for a very, very, very small set of students with significant challenges. But we have a new criteria for the MCAS-Alt participation. This is really based on the federal legislation for Every Student Succeeds Act and what's known as the 1% cap on states. The federal government has given us additional information, additional resources and instructions to create a definition for what they consider the most significant disabilities for students with the most significant disabilities. So we are required by the federal government, each state must create a definition for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. Only students that meet this definition, only them that meet this definition can participate or can be eligible for an alternate assessment based on alternate achievement standards. And the nature of the reason behind this process is that the federal government and the advocacy organizations really want to make sure that only a small set of students are included in alternate assessment, because being included in alternate assessments often will delay a student's ability or chance to graduate high school, get a diploma. Several of these students usually are not exposed to the general education curriculum. And so they're really making sure that states are doing their best to provide guidance to local school districts, making sure only local school districts designate only those students who are truly achieving on a very substantially separate curriculum are participating in alternate assessments based on alternate achievement standards. So what we've had before, the guidance is still the same guidance. Students should not be scheduled for alternate assessment if they previously failed the MCAS test or excessively absent. They've not provided instruction in the general education curriculum. They're English learner. So I'm not going to read all these reasons to you. Same reasons that we've had before. So this is not new. What is new is the definition we were required to put forward. So we have a new decision-making system that's replacing the quote-unquote decision tree. The first question that IEP teams should consider if they're considering a student for alternate assessment is, does the student meet the definition and all criteria of a student with the most significant cognitive disabilities? If they don't, then we have to proceed to question 2, which is they would be required to take the standard MCAS test with or without accommodations. And for this year, there's an option for a grade level or competency portfolio. Now, what is the definition, you may be asking, that we put forward on our website? If you haven't seen it already, it's available on the MCAS-Alt Educators Manual. It's available on the MCAS Accessibility Accommodation Manual. We have it listed on our website. Now, this definition is put forward to really try to help teams, IEP teams, identify in a concrete way which students are eligible for an alternate assessment. Which students meet this definition? What does it mean to be eligible for alternate assessment? What does it mean to be a student with the most significant cognitive disabilities? So the first 3 points of this definition are somewhat routine, familiar. People should be familiar with this. If you have a most significant cognitive disability, you have to have significant delays in attaining age-level academic achievement standards, even with systematic, extensively modified instructions. You're going to have related services and modifications. You're going to have these disabilities are going to impact your educational performance. These students often struggle with applying learning from one setting to another. They require extensive, direct, individualized instructions and substantial supports. So those are all observational information that you have learned as a team about the student. what we've added to this definition that we really feel is going to help, and it's also required by the federal government, is to have assessment information in adaptive behavior, meaning that in order for a student to meet this definition, the team has to have evaluative information regarding the student in cognitive and adaptive behavior, and the student has to demonstrate that they are performing 2 or more standard deviations below the mean on commonly accepted assessments. That's probably the newest aspect that teams are going to have to look at and make a determination. Do we have this information? What can we look at for historical evaluation records for the student? Are they truly performing or demonstrating their adaptive behavior and cognitive functioning 2 or more standard deviations below the mean? Then they potentially would be eligible for an alternate assessment. Again, if you're going to be if you're eligible for special education services, this information should already be available for you, because teams have to make that determination. They have to evaluate the student in all areas of suspected disability. But if teams do not have this information, now would be a good time to talk with your school psychologist, your evaluation team leader, looking at these small sets of students and asking, hey, do we have this information? This is what we're required to do. This would also help us make decisions for these students. So individuals, education team leaders, special education liaisons who are running team meetings for these small sets of students are, quote unquote, be able to use a good measuring stick, a good device that's objective in making this determination. They're not, quote unquote, relying on sometimes more, it could be more, I wouldn't say guesswork, but more individual discretion for teams about making that determination. Sometimes different teams will have a different understanding of what's a significant delay. What is the age level significant delay from another team in another school? I'm going to have Deb explain this new alternate assessment participation tool that she put together that's going to really help teams with this process, and that's now available.
Okay, thank you, Rob. So as Rob said, your team is going to look at this, but only for the students that you're thinking about putting on the alternate assessment. If you have if you're thinking this student will be taking the MCAS with accommodations, then you don't need this tool at all. This is for students that you are suspecting have the most significant cognitive disability and should be taking the MCAS alternate assessment. So all we've done is taken that criteria and we've broken it down into 4 sections to go along with these 4 questions. What we're asking on the right-hand side is to think about some ways in which you see these issues. It can be from classroom observations. It can be either from formal or informal on most of them, except for obviously number 4, where we're asking for the cognitive evaluations. We're asking for that information as well as the adaptive behavior information. The others we can have clinical, or someone was asking what I meant by the clinical specialist. So it could be your speech and language person, your OTs, your PTs. Maybe you have a mobility person that comes in. Whatever helps you to answer those questions, yes or no, because you're going to answer yes or no to each of those questions if you believe that this student has a significant cognitive disability and would be eligible to take the test. They participate in the assessment. I am suspecting that the chair people will be the ones to complete it with the help of the special education teachers or clinicians. You can always download a blank form and ask the people involved with the student to fill out their section, and then one person, whoever has rights to get into the Dropbox, because that's where it's going to be uploaded to in the MCAS-Alt file exchange, which is in the security portal. So if you're an administrator, you have rights to get into the MCAS, then you would have rights to get into the file exchange. And it's a new one. It's called MCAS-Alt file exchange, very catchy one, right? But you're going to go into the security portal and go into the data, go down, scroll down underneath where it says MCAS 2023, and then it should be right there. You'll see there's 2 different ones, MCAS and MCAS-Alt, so just make sure you get the right one. If the student is determined that they are eligible to participate. That means according to your resources and your assessments, this student has a significant cognitive disability. Then they will be taking the alternate assessment in all the content areas that are required for that grade. Okay. And I don't know if Rob mentioned it, but this is a transition year. So it's, as he said, it's good to see what you need and get it together. But if you have already had the IEP meeting and it's already been determined, we're not asking you to go in and do over all of your IEPs, right, Rob? We are.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's correct, Deb. I really appreciate that.
Just want to make sure that we reiterate that this is time for you to look at what you need and get this together. So I know that some schools have students on one content area and do an alt in another. So I believe you are going to find those students who are taking the standard MCAS with accommodations is probably the correct way to go. This has nothing to do with the student's disability category. This is strictly about the information that you collect and whether you answer yes or no on this participation tool. So I hope that answers a couple of questions I've seen in the chat.
And Deb, if I could add one thing to this,
Please.
is that I really appreciate you explaining the nature of this tool, how it's only used for students that are going to be taking the alternate assessment. So it's really not a huge lift, and it's going to be uploaded in the security portal. But the main reason why we're providing this is that we really, really want to help IEP team chairs make this decision. We feel this is going to be useful for you to go through the process and help everyone, especially parents, other educators, understand, hey, is the student really appropriate for the alternate assessment? Part of our requirement is we have to monitor districts. We have to make sure we're monitoring districts and how they're placing students to the alternate assessment. So this will also help us. And we don't necessarily want to create a new bureaucratic form or measure, but our intent is really to help teams make defensible decisions. We know that everyone has a lot to do, but we really want to be seen as a partner and help teams, help special education leaders make correct decisions for their students, especially regarding the MCAS assessment. We wouldn't do this if we didn't think assessment was important. It does provide, we feel, teams and parents with useful information, especially if it's done well. Deb had mentioned that, again, this is a transition year. We're not asking anyone to go back and change the IEP if they're already designated to the MCAS-Alt. And we want to help people, help teams make good decisions.
And I just want to make sure that, as Rob pointed out, that we are responsible for monitoring districts that are over that 1%. That's our job. And we have to report to the federal government that we are doing this. In order to do that, having this tool uploaded to the file exchange helps us to monitor and see that the right decisions are being made. And as Rob always says, the defensible decisions that you're making. And we want to make sure that you are also aware of the decisions that you've made. So when you start looking at your participation rate, because you know that letter's coming sooner or later that we're going to send out to many of you that are over 1% for your district, you can have these documents and you'll see as time goes on, and obviously this year you probably won't have as many, or maybe there'll be less next year, but you want to make sure that you have one of these for every student that's going to be participating in the alternate assessment. That's the ultimate goal, and it won't be this year, but that's the purpose of having it and asking you to upload it.
Just one point, Pete, there's a lot of questions coming in, and after the presentation is finished, we're probably going to go through the questions and answer them verbally. Is that correct, Deb?
Yes.
All right. So just keep in mind, if you ask a question, just wait till the end. You can always ask questions at the end, and we're going to take some time at the end to answer all those questions. But if you could just pay attention to the next few slides, because some of your questions may be answered. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. So we're just going to take a quick look from the treetops of the 2023 statewide results. This is from 2019 to 2023. And everything has gone up. I mean, not everything, but progressing went up, which is great. And emerging went down because progressing went up. That's usually what happens. And then awareness has gone up a tick, but incompletes are starting to come down. And we'll talk more about this when we look at the feedback forms. But sometimes, and especially in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of movements of our students. And when that happens, they move from one district to another district, and perhaps unfortunately, the district that sent it to you didn't collect anything, and there isn't enough time to have a complete portfolio. So sometimes that happens and it's incomplete. So just remember, even if your student is moving, to remind your teachers that you still need to collect and send any of that information forward. And I just want to talk about some ways in which you can support our teachers. Please remind them, if they haven't already started, they have a skill survey that needs to get done before they can even start choosing their entry points or access skills. So you can ask about that. And you can also ask them what they need, because we get feedback from them. We have about 60 some, we used to have a lot more, but we have about 60 training specialists. You may have some training specialists in your district, and we ask for feedback. And one of the things is, they don't always think that administrators know what they do and how much work they have to do. So ask them what they need for their support. Letting them come to these trainings, having them come in person to the review sessions. Those are in January, and then February and March. I am telling you, these teachers work. They come early, they get their questions answered, and they work. They work at least until noon, and sometimes longer. We'll be leaving after our meetings and they're still sitting there working. So they do take advantage of that time to input their data. So it's worth their time to go out and finish this and get their questions answered. And just allowing some flexibility. Like I always say, you should you should enter your data at least once a week. That's what takes the most time. They should be planning any of their instruction based on, well, not based on, but their assessment's going to be integrated right into what they're teaching. So that's already been in their planning. But the data entry is what takes time, and then printing it out at the end takes some time. So if you can allow some flexibility, having a para cover, I know that getting staff is hard, but maybe when they go to a special, you could have some flexibility there. Sometimes having just a sub coverage, but keeping the teacher in the school building in case there's issues, but being allowed to go like to the library and work. So they're still able to get their work done, but still be available for you. And then you as the administrator has to sign off on these. And you're saying that these are authentic, that they're complete. So set a date or designate someone else to review them, but set a date for when you want to see them. Give them that time, give them that date that you're going to want to look at it, probably in, I would say, the first or second week in March. You shouldn't be waiting for a teacher to finish. Okay, I've had some administrators call and say, well, the teacher wasn't done. The time, the deadline doesn't change. We're all aware of the deadline today of what it is in March. So set a date that you need to see them and review them. And then at least the progress, if they're not completely done, you can at least look at them if they're pretty close to being done, because I also have to invite the parents in. So that's another piece of it that takes some time, and it should be pretty well completed. So send out reminders, stop in, check in periodically, especially for new teachers. I can't emphasize this enough. New teachers are totally overwhelmed anyway. And then we're saying, oh, hey, here's something else that we would like you to do. Check in on those, because by January, if they haven't started, they are swimming and they just don't know what to do. And I'm sure there's some of you out there that can attest to this, that some teachers will just leave and they don't come back. And sometimes they take anything that they did do with them, and most of the time they don't have anything. So just check in, just so they know that, what do you need? How can I help? Ask the kids what they're doing, what they're working on. They're always happy to show you their work. And if you see an educator that needs support, we also have training specialists that can email or call for support to help. So be sure to reach out for that, or look in your own district. What teachers, seasoned teachers, do you have? And just a reminder that verification form that I talked about, that you want to allow the parents to come in, it's not a consent form. It's just an opportunity for them to come to view their students' work. Here's what we've been working on. Here's the progress that they've made. But sometimes that doesn't work. They can't come in. You are free to make a copy of that portfolio and send it home for the parents to review. There's nothing they can change. There's nothing secure. The only thing that's secure is your student identification booklet. So don't let that one out of your sight, because that's going to get it back to you, to your school district. So don't share that. If you have to send out if a student leaves you, don't send the student identification booklet with them. All right, I'm going to pass it back over to Rob. I think I've covered enough.
All right, hey, thanks, Deb. And this is kind of a repeat of what I mentioned earlier regarding the definition for students with the most significant kind of disabilities. Just going to talk a little bit about the Every Student Succeeds Act, the 1% cap on MCAS-Alt participation. Remember, as we say several times, that this is a statewide cap. We realize that some districts may be over the 1% because the nature of the population in their particular district or school, they have a small number. However, in general, we're really required to look at districts who are over 1%, and we have to really do our monitoring at the state level to make sure only those students who are truly eligible for the ALT are designated for the ALT. Hence, that's why we have a definition. So I'm just repeating the information, which many of you already know, that each year the state, so Massachusetts, had applied for an extension of the 1% cap because we've assessed more than 1% students, and the MCAS-Alt, 1% of students assessed, over 1% of them have taken the MCAS-Alt. So we applied for a waiver last year. We were granted that waiver, but we're only granted that waiver because we were able to show progress that we're lowering the number. One of the requirements also was to create this definition for students with the most significant kind of disabilities, and the definition has to include adaptive behavior. So we've also done that this year. So we hope by refining those aspects, the definition, continuing to monitor districts, we're going to continue to lower the numbers. And I really looked at this for several years and was really kind of taken aback about, geez, why is the federal government really pushing this? Why are the advocacy groups really pushing this? And the main reason why they're really pushing this, I have come to learn and be exposed to from talking with a lot of educators, is that really when you're setting a student for an alternate assessment based on alternate achievement standards, you really are potentially affecting the student's chance to graduate and expose those students to the wide variety of the general education curriculum. And that's really, really important for our students. If you're making a decision that in 3rd or 4th grade, hey, we need to do an alternate assessment, we're saying that potentially the student's not going to graduate high school, that's a really big decision. We really, really want to go through that carefully, and we're really concerned about that process. So we want to help teams make the right decisions for the students, and make sure everyone's fully informed, making sure teams are informing their parents, hey, your child, Javier, John, Susie is taking the alternate assessment. These students by taking the alternate assessment, it's going to potentially delay their chance to get a high school diploma, making sure parents are informed in that process. These are here listing on the slide. I'm not going to read these to you. These are lists of resources you can use as a district to help you understand the 1% cap, to help you provide guidance to your IEP teams. You have decision-making guidelines. There's an alternate assessment participation tool. Deb explained that. Sample parent notification letter. There's district data that we have available on our website. Annual training presentation. We have a a mock-up of a PowerPoint presentation you can look
And I
at.
think
Use your-
Kevin, excuse me, I'm sorry, Rob, just Kevin can put in the website for that on the ESSA site, because we have updated the parent letter as well as the training. So those are new this year. So Kev, if you don't mind putting the ESSA link in there for everyone. Thank you.
So I'm not going to talk too much more about the 1% cap. One other option for a very, very small number of students I want to present today is what we call the grade level and competency portfolio. So we still have for this year a grade level and competency portfolio. Well, what is that? That is a portfolio or an alternate assessment. So they're not taking the standard MCAS test, but it is not an alternate assessment based on alternate achievement standards. It's a portfolio assessment for the students who you cannot assess with the standard test, even with accommodations, but they have skills that are at or near grade level. You know, John, Susie, Steve, they can do some of the classroom work at certain times, but because of the nature of disability, perhaps they have significant low frustration tolerance, perhaps they really struggle with formalized standardized assessments. They can't demonstrate their true knowledge. There is something called the grade level portfolio, grade level or competency portfolio. If you use this link, it will take you to our manual on our website. And by submitting this portfolio, the students could potentially earn a score of partially meeting expectations or above. So similar to student taking a standard test. On this particular slide, you'll see examples of some students that may be well suited for a grade level or competency portfolio. Students with significant emotional behavior disabilities, health-related disability where the nature of a prolonged testing is too difficult for them to maintain concentration, significant motor communication disabilities. Those kind of students could be potentially suited for a MCAS grade level or competency portfolio. So the difference between grade level and competency portfolio is that a competency portfolio, if the students do that in high school, they could potentially earn their high school diploma, again, because they could earn an equivalent score of a student taking the standard MCAS test. Here's a list of steps that teams would take if they're considering a student for a grade level or competency portfolio. It's really important. Just the first step would be, who would be appropriate for this? Can the student take the standard test? Have they taken the standard test? Would this be a way to collect them? How are they performing in the general education classroom when you give them a practice MCAS test? If we make this decision, who's going to help the educator collect this information? What are the mission requirements? Who are we going to collaborate with? If I'm a special education teacher and I'm working on a competency portfolio in biology, I'm going to need to probably talk with the curriculum coordinator in science to make sure I can correctly understand the curriculum frameworks, making sure the work is correctly designed to assess those specific standards. So it's really important to review the curriculum frameworks, collaborate, and students have to be instructed on the standards. When you collect the work samples, you can start collecting them throughout the year, and you make sure each of the work samples are scored accurately, and they're dated and they're put in a portfolio, and you really have to be aware of the submission guidelines. If you have questions about the grade level of competency portfolio, please feel free to reach out. Review our website. We'd be more than happy to provide you some additional information. We've had a couple of trainings already on grade level of competency portfolios, and those recordings are going to be available for you to look at, and it'd be a good opportunity or a good option if you're considering a grade level portfolio to look at those trainings before you reach out, ask some questions, and we could support you in that. For students in high school, if you're looking at getting a high school diploma, there are a couple of options available to you. In addition to the competency portfolio, students can take a high school retest. Let's say, for example, a student took the competency portfolio in grade 10, or they took the standard MCAS test, or even an ALT. You could still try the student on the retest. They could certainly have tried the retest. There's nothing preventing them for doing that. It does not affect your participation at all. It's just an option to give the student the chance to potentially get their high school diploma by taking that. There's also called the MCAS performance appeal options. We just had a training last week on the MCAS performance appeals, And that training is going to be posted on the MCAS Resource Center. So if you're interested in knowing more about the performance appeals process, you certainly could look at that training, reach out to us with questions, and we'll provide you some support for MCAS performance appeals. I'm going to turn it over to Deb here, and she's going to speak a little bit about how to locate and interpret MCAS-Alt feedback forms.
Thank you, Rob. I love that we have many different ways for our students to get to a diploma. So they have so many options. So some of you may have seen this before. I just want to make sure that you know where to get the feedback forms. A lot of times we always tell the teachers when we do our portfolio review sessions in January, I do a quick little like 2 or 3 slides, and I always tell them that these feedback forms will be available in mid-June. Ask your administrator. But a lot of times, I know it's a busy time of year, either people don't know how to get them or where to find them, and then the teacher never sees these feedback forms until they receive them in the fall once it's done. So we have an appeal process, and we'll talk about that, but they should also be able to see the results. And I know that the teachers always want to see the results that they got. So you should know that they changed the portal so that now that when you put your username and password in, you get a MFA, that multi-factor authentication. So if you don't have that, you probably haven't been updated yet for your password, but you're going to log into the Gateway portal. You're going to go to the application list, and then you're going to go to the Dropbox. If you have any trouble, you don't know your password, there is a directory administrator for your school. So this is for the preliminary results, but I just want to let you know, for the 130 of you that are here, please spread the word that the MCAS-Alt preliminary is all you're going to see. You will not see MCAS-Alt final results. The MCAS-Alt results after the appeals get merged with the MCAS, and then you have that final MCAS. They call it a mega file, but that's where everything is integrated. So when you see the preliminary results, you want to make sure you check these out. You're going to view them, and you'll see once you log in, you get this blue box. This is what I was talking about for the file exchange. You see, here's the MCAS 2023. I can't scroll down because it's a screenshot, but if you scroll down a little bit more, you would see the MCAS-Alt file exchange, and that's where you're going to upload that tool for only the students that are taking the alt. So anyway, for this one, you're going to see MCAS 2023 data, click next, and then you get this dark blue box, and then you're going to look for where it says feedback forms. So obviously this is 2023, next year it'll be 23-24, but it'll always say MCAS-Alt feedback forms. You'll click on that. Once you click on that, then you get a download, because these are PDFs. The PDF comes in there, you click that, and you'll get 2 for every student. These instructions are also in the principal's manual. We also put them in the SAS update and the MCAS-Alt newsletter. If you're a new administrator, you can go to the SAS site on our website, go to the student assessment, and then there's an SAS update, and you can subscribe there. So this is what it looks like if you haven't seen it before, and every student has 2 pages. In this case, a grade 3 student wouldn't have science, but they would still have 2 pages. So this is where you find your student's name and all the information to make sure it's from your student. And then we'll look at the different areas. So that top part there is the for each strand. So for language strand, it's the level of complexity, demonstration of skills, independence, self-eval, and generalized performance. Those are the areas in which are scored at our scoring. This, on the left-hand side, is the overall achievement level for ELA. So these are the individual strand scores. And then these on the left-hand side are the achievement levels, okay? So what does this mean for the level of complexity? That's just how the student accesses the curriculum. Are they just working on motor and communication skills, or are they able to enter into the curriculum even at a modified grade level, well below grade level, okay? But still able to make some choices, maybe count some numbers, make groupings, those kinds of things. This student is not working on those, on that level. They are working on things that maybe 18 to 2-year-old would, maybe 18 months, where they're just grasping, releasing. So that's the level of complexity. Next, we have the demonstration of skills. And that is the accuracy. So that accuracy is determined by these scores here. We take the scores from the graph as well as the evidence, and this is where we get this number. So you can see 4 here, and that means the student was between 76 and 100% accurate. And then the same for independence. We want to see how independent the student is. So anywhere from 76 to 100, they get 4. Some of our students were very excited when they get 52% independent, and that may be, making progress. But that's how we get it. We average that in. If you want to know more about the scoring guidelines, those are also on our website. They're always available to you. But let's look at when you have a score of M. And M doesn't necessarily mean missing. M means that the portfolio contained insufficient information to be scored. And still, the student still learned the skill that was being taught. It just means we didn't have enough information to score that particular strand. In this case, the M was in reading, and always there's a comment that goes with an M. If you get an M in one, you always have an M in both. You can't have one without the other, because it's accuracy and independence. They always go together. Those comments, if you have questions, please call me, because I can pretty much tell what's happening or what happened or what to look for in your evidence, or the teacher can ask me. That's why you need to keep a copy of the portfolio at school. You can just keep a copy of the evidence because you still have access to the forms and graphs, but you don't have access to the evidence unless you make a copy. So if you have that, you're going to look at the comment. And in this case, the comment said, all skills listed in the measurable outcome were not addressed during each activity on the data chart. And also they weren't listed on the 2 pieces of evidence. So I know a lot of times people just see the M and they automatically submit an appeal. But before you do that, if the teacher could review the copy of the assessment, or if you're if they're gone, typically they're still in school. So you can look at it together and see, does the entry point contain more than one skill? What does that mean? It just means 2 related skills. So like addition and subtraction. In this case, it's ELA, so it could be main idea and details. So 2 skills are in there. And so you want to look and see, is that what the teacher chose? Because the teacher chooses those entry points. If that's true, did that educator actually assess both of those skills on the data point, on each data point, both skills, in order to keep that graph correct, right? Because we want to make sure if that's what we said we're going to assess, then we're assessing both of them on the data chart and in the evidence. So these are the MCAS-Alt results that we report to you. So awareness, emerging, and progressing. And that's right on our on the parent guardian report. You'll see how it's explained there. And incomplete again, is just insufficient evidence. So don't think that it's just, oh, they didn't put something in there. On occasion, that's true. Sometimes a data chart gets lost in the shuffle and we don't have it, or we have two of the same strands. So it's, yeah, that's sad when that happens. The MCAS-Alt results are included in the accountability system, along with the results of the MCAS test. Remember, I told you how they merge. For school accountability, these are the scaled score equivalent that you get. Right? So just so you know, participation, if the student, we get a assessment, and even if it's incomplete, you still get participation. I just want to make sure you understand that when we say progressing, it is not passing. Sometimes, especially in the science, because in grade 9, a lot of times the student will take the science and they'll get progressing. And then the following year, it'll say previously tested. It used to say previously failed. But our students are working well below grade level expectations. Progressing means they're doing well in that one skill. So they're learning that skill. They don't need a lot of prompting. It's basically accurate, but don't forget that we are going to spiral back to an area that they need, and that's well below what their peers are doing. That's why they're taking the alternate assessment. So just be aware of that, and also know that your MCAS-Alt scores are included in the not meeting expectation level of the school and district results. So this is our contact information. This is the student assessment update that I was telling you about. So if you're new and you're not signed up for those, they're so helpful. They come every couple of weeks. MCAS-Alt doesn't do it every week, but when there's anything important or that you need to know, it is there. So you have our contact information. We're available unless we're on the road. We're available to answer any questions you have, but please use the resources, the principal's manual, the SAS update, and the newsletter, which you'll now receive because you came to this to get your information. All right. Thanks again. I really wish we could see you, but thank you so much for coming, asking great questions, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Have a great morning. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody.